Hey everyone, and welcome to Boston Autoblog. Consumers have made it very clear in the early 2020s that they don't want small cars or even sedans. They want crossovers. In fact, they can't get enough of these vehicles. It seems as though there's a crossover for every single segment and price range and for every consumer. However, those same consumers have a lot of demands, such as they want practicality, a lot of interior space, they want a good amount of technology and safety features, while also not paying a premium. And for Volkswagen, they didn't really have a small crossover yet that could go up against the Subaru Crosstrek, Mazda CX-30, or Honda HR-V until today. And so we're taking a look at the all-new 2022 Volkswagen Taos. Now, 3 to 4 years ago, we would classify this vehicle as being a subcompact. However, Volkswagen is marketing the Taos as a compact SUV. And this is a small segment that's slowly growing in size. As Americans want to be a bit more adventurous, they also want to add that rugged characteristics to them, while also having that interior space for their growing families. And I can tell you right now that I spent about a few minutes inside this vehicle, and it is very spacious compared to a Subaru Crosstrek or a Mazda CX-30, and that bodes very well for this newcomer in the lineup. The Taos is not just an addition to the lineup, it's actually replacing a few vehicles that are no longer sold here in the US, like the Volkswagen Golf and the Golf Alltrack. And as we all know, for vehicles around $25,000 to $35,000, Americans are not looking to buy a hatchback or a station wagon. So going in the crossover direction was certainly the right choice. But even better is that Volkswagen gave this vehicle Atlas-like design qualities, which should draw in a lot of buyers who maybe are not able to afford an Atlas and are just looking for a good daily driver that is spacious enough for their small and growing family, while also being a good sized vehicle if they do live in the city. So in this video, we're going to take a good long look at the Volkswagen Taos, see how it compares to other vehicles in its segment, while also seeing how it fits in the lineup for Volkswagen, and also see why, if you're looking at buying a subcompact crossover, but you're not happy with the lack of practicality and interior space, then maybe going with the Volkswagen Taos might be a great decision. Now, before I get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Quirk Volkswagen in Braintree, Massachusetts, for allowing me to do this review. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Volkswagen inventory. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. Volkswagen has always been an intriguing brand, one in which offered a lineup of cars you wouldn't necessarily see from competitors in the 21st century, such as a hot hatch, a station wagon, and a sports sedan in the GLI, all of which could be bought for less than $30,000. They've always marched to the beat of their own drum, and even today, their selection of cars differ a bit from Japanese and American rivals. The all-new Volkswagen Taos arrives just in time for a new wave of crossovers that are affordable, off-road worthy, and far more practical than subcompacts, and this newest addition for Volkswagen could very well be a game changer for the brand moving forward. While critics aren't thrilled about the loss of the Golf and Golf Alltrack in the US, the Taos just might be a worthy successor that can outshine the cars it's replacing. Starting off with pricing, our model for this review is an SEL, which comes in with a starting price of $31,490. It should be noted that the Taos we have today has a front-wheel drive drivetrain, so you will be paying a little extra for all-wheel drive, and of course the optional panoramic moonroof. Where the Taos draws the most amount of attention is with its size, as many people are often surprised that this crossover is nothing like subcompacts, and almost has dimensions similar to smaller compact crossovers. To get a better understanding of where the Taos fits in, it's about 10 inches shorter than the Tiguan, but it's actually a half-inch wider, which is going to give you the perception of being in a much bigger vehicle once you step inside. Also, with the traditional SUV roofline, it doesn't look like a hatchback, and instead would be comparable to the Jeep Compass and Nissan Rogue Sport. For those who owned a first-generation Tiguan back in the day, the Taos is pretty much identical in size, and with the current model being one of the largest compact crossovers on the market, it left a void open for a replacement and a reintroduction to a segment that's become quite popular. With the Taos being branded as a compact SUV, ground clearance comes in at 6.6 inches, providing just enough height to tackle some light off-roading and unplowed streets during the winter. Working in the Taos' favor is that it's essentially a baby Atlas, specifically up front, as it shares similar design cues, giving it a more upscale road presence right off the bat. There's some minor cosmetic features that initially go unnoticed, but certainly helps give the Taos a memorable road presence, like the LED light bar that runs the length of the grille and flows into the headlights. And this appears to be the direction Volkswagen is going in for the front fascia of their newest vehicles. Catching my eye is the active side air curtains to aid in aerodynamics, but what I can appreciate the most is that what you see up front is for the most part functional, and that's not something we typically see from crossovers. Keeping this crossover looking fresh is the gloss black accents that dominate the lower portion of the front bumper, as the plastic cladding isn't as egregious as most rugged vehicles in this price range. Coming standard even for the S trim will be LED headlights, and available for the SE and SEL models will be high beam assist for better illumination at night. Then moving over to the side profile, our model is sitting on 18-inch gloss black wheels, contrasting nicely with the cornflower blue paint color, making this crossover stand out amongst its competitors. You will have body color folding side mirrors, however, you won't have turn signal indicators. And for added safety, there will be blind spot detection. Coming around to the back, the Taos receives its own distinct appearance, as it doesn't have a scaled down rear fascia of a Tiguan or even the Atlas. Just like up front, LED taillights do come standard, and as you can tell with the higher roofline and boxy C-pillars, this isn't the typical subcompact crossover that provides the same interior room as a hatchback. And most likely, once you take a look inside, you'll be genuinely impressed with how much room Volkswagen found for such a small vehicle. Of course, there will be plastic cladding for the rear bumper just to give the Taos a bit more of an off-road look. But where many buyers can appreciate this crossover is that it doesn't appear to be a lifted hatchback, and instead is a true mini SUV. Under the hood, the Volkswagen Taos is powered by a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that puts out 158 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque, and for front-wheel drive models, it will be paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. While performance numbers don't appear to be all that impressive, it responds better than what you see on paper. Obviously, you're not going to be going from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. However, you have enough passing power to get around slower drivers, or get you safely on the highway. Personally, I would like to see a more powerful engine as an option, especially when you're spending close to $35,000 for an SEL. But for what it is, the Taos performs just as well as its competitors, and that's due to not having a CVT. For the drivetrain, you can opt for all-wheel drive for an additional $1,600, and with that, you'll also receive a 7-speed DSG. For fuel economy, you can expect to receive right around 28 miles per gallon in the city, and 36 miles per gallon on the highway, to boast a best-in-class highway efficiency. Stepping inside, you can buy heated leather seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side being power adjustable, whereas passengers will have to find their ideal seating position. By going with the SEL trim, you'll have a full digital gauge cluster that we find in new Volkswagen models, and more importantly is how in-depth this display is, as you can customize the appearance of the gauges, scroll through a variety of information, view the navigation map, and even change radio stations by pressing the buttons mounted on the steering wheel. The functionality that you have here is on par with luxury brands, and at the very least is competitive with the digital display we found in the Hyundai Kona. For those colder days during the winter, the Taos is equipped with a 3-level heated steering wheel, adding additional comfort to your driving experience. Moving over to the infotainment system, you'll have an 8-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation, and for the SEL, an 8-speaker Beats audio sound system. Where buyers are going to be the most impressed is with how responsive this user interface is, as there's no lagging. Resolution and quality is good for its segment, and you can tell it's a stepping stone to Audi's MMI user interface. Not only can you access settings and information pertaining to your car from this screen, but you can also activate or deactivate safety systems, which I'd recommend keeping on for added peace of mind. To help get you to different menus and to keep your eyes on the road, there'll be quick access buttons, and for drivers who want a more analog feel, there will be physical dials for the volume and tuning. As always, you'll have a rear backup camera with trajectory, to go along with parking sensors and rear cross-traffic alert for when you're backing out of spots in a crowded lot. Below, you'll find the buttons and dials for your dual-zone climate control, front and rear defrosters, and heated leather seats. And if you're familiar with Volkswagen products, this layout is not much different than what we see from other vehicles in the lineup. As we work our way towards the center console, you will have two USB inputs for smartphone connectivity, to go along with a cubby for smaller items. For the center storage compartment, you'll have enough room for a wallet or a smartphone. And above, our model has a $1,200 power moonroof to let in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now for passengers in the back, we're going to start off on the passenger side, and believe it or not, this seat is adjusted all the way back, and I have plenty of legroom to work with here. Now if you own a Volkswagen Golf or Golf Alltrack, you know that passengers in the second row are going to be very claustrophobic, especially if you have taller passengers up front and also you're a tall driver. And in my family, I own a GTI and my dad owns a Golf Alltrack, and the second row can get pretty tight. So it's really great to see that Volkswagen is offering us a vehicle that is most certainly practical for people of all sizes and shapes. So even though I'm at 5'5", I have a good amount of legroom. So I think if you're on the height of maybe 5'8", 5'9", you can sit back here pretty comfortably. Also taking into consideration, you have a more traditional SUV roofline, so you have plenty of headroom to work with here, even with this massive panoramic moonroof. So this is really great to see all around. Then for the center seat, there's some great placements for my feet actually, despite the fact that the center hump is very aggressive. But I think it's going to come down to shoulder room. Obviously, just because most vehicles in this segment are pretty compact, and the Taos is no different. I don't think you could fit 3 average-sized adults across. That's just not going to be practical. However, I do think you could fit 3 kids back here, which is most certainly important, especially if you are on a budget, and maybe you do live in the city where you need to have more of that compact vehicle, especially when you're parking on city streets. So this is actually really great from a practicality standpoint, and I'm pretty impressed here, because I reviewed the Subaru Crosstrek and the Mazda CX-30, even the Hyundai Kona, which are all in the same price range as the Volkswagen Taos, but they just don't provide this amount of room. So that's really great to see. And then on the driver's side, I adjusted this to someone of my height, around 5'5", and I have plenty of legroom to work with here. I mean, this vehicle feels a lot bigger than a subcompact. I think that's why Volkswagen is marketing this crossover as compact, and I can totally see that. So Volkswagen is still bringing that same DNA where they love to provide a lot of legroom for passengers in the second row, and the Taos is no different. So I think when it comes to interior space and overall practicality, the Volkswagen Taos is most certainly a winner. Also back here, you will have 2 rear air vents to go along with 1 USB-C input. Now it is pretty impressive to see 2 rear air vents, because most subcompact crossovers or vehicles in this price range are not going to have that. So I definitely like to see that. And then rounding out the rear seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive right around 28 cubic feet of rear cargo space, which is phenomenal for a vehicle of this size. Now, I think there's a lot of confusion as to what market the Taos actually competes in. So when you look at vehicles around this price range, you're probably thinking Jeep Compass, and then of course the Nissan Rogue Sport, which I believe is its closest rivals. However, you could cross-shop with this vehicle with subcompact crossovers like the Subaru Crosstrek, like the Honda HR-V, Toyota CHR, and even the Mazda CX-30. And when you compare the Taos to those vehicles, you're looking at more than 10 cubic feet of extra room. So the Taos is very practical for a small family, or if you live in the city where you do on-street parking all the time. That's where I think the Taos can be very successful. Also, when you look at the exterior, it does look a bit rugged, so naturally this would compete very well with the Jeep Compass. So I think overall what you're looking at here, you have a vehicle that is conducive for someone who has a family. If you are on a strict budget and you really are not looking at a compact crossover or a well-equipped compact crossover, you can look at a Taos and get those features and get that space that you're looking for. Then with the second row seats folded, that space will right around double in size to 66 cubic feet. So overall, I think the Taos is providing a heck of a lot more value than the vehicles it's replacing, like the Volkswagen Golf and the Golf Alltrack, because yes, they're hatchbacks and station wagons, but they're not the most practical, especially for consumers in 2021, and Americans perceive those vehicles to not be as practical or versatile, whereas the Taos, being a crossover, looking like the Atlas, is going to do quite well, and that's why I think that Volkswagen, with what they've done here with this vehicle, they've given it a package where it can succeed, where it can sell, and we're starting to see that immediately right now, especially where these vehicles are just arriving at dealers. What you're also going to notice too is that this cargo area is very deep, so you can put bigger boxes and bigger items back here with ease. I was able to fit all my camera gear back here and still have extra room for groceries and smaller items. So that is really great to see, especially if you are on the go and on the move at all times. Then beneath the floor mat, you will find your spare tire, which certainly makes us question why some brands are not offering spare tires for bigger vehicles. So if you do encounter a flat on your road trip or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. Also, and not equipped on our model right now during this video, you will have a rear cargo cover, which will keep all your valuable items out of sight. So if you are like me and you have camera gear with you or anything of value, you can leave them back here and have that peace of mind knowing that no one will be able to peek in and steal what you have. And then once you're done, since you do not have a power lift gate, just grab the handle and close the hatch. Alright, so let's take the Volkswagen Taos out for a test ride to see how it performs, how it handles, how it drives, and how it compares to other vehicles in this segment, and also how it compares to, say, a Volkswagen Tiguan, and really see if this is the perfect vehicle at around $25,000 to $35,000. Now, before I set off, I do want to point out that you will have remote start on the SEL, so that's really great to see, especially if you do live up here in New England. And let's set off. Now, we're going to be taking the Taos on arguably some of the best roads in Eastern Mass, up here at the Blue Hills. Now, acceleration isn't that bad. Of course, we are in the front-wheel drive model, so you're going to have an 8-speed automatic, unlike the all-wheel drive models, which have a 7-speed DSG, which I think would make the driving experience a lot more engaging, but this is pretty impressive. Something I do want to point out immediately is the amount of vision that you have here to work with. A-pillars are not very aggressive at all. Also, you have a nice view in front of you with a bigger windshield. And then side mirrors, you will have blind spot detection, but the side mirrors are very big, so there's not many blind spots at all. Then when it comes to shoulder room, you feel like you're in a much bigger vehicle than advertiser, and when you look at the dimensions, because I have plenty of shoulder room to work with here. This vehicle is very spacious on the inside. That's really important for people who are looking to buy a vehicle in this segment. And really, subcompact crossovers are very, very tight. So this is great if you do have a growing family or you just want to have more interior space overall. Road noise isn't that bad either. Now, of course, we are doing about 40 miles an hour, and it's not that bad. It's pretty quiet in here, which is pretty impressive. Just because it is a entry-level crossover for Volkswagen, you don't really expect to get all the bells and whistles or the interior refinement, but this is pretty good. What I also love too is the fact that we have a full digital gauge cluster with the navigation map in the center of the gauges. I love that. It's very Audi-esque, and it's great to see, especially for a vehicle in this segment. Now, when it comes to steering input, steering is very light in regular normal mode, which is to be expected. Obviously, this is not a sports crossover at all. We won't have sports tuned suspension, but I like the steering. It's very direct. Also, I love the feeling of the leather-wrapped steering wheel. Really nice. Braking, obviously, we're not going to have the Golf R brakes that are on the GTI, so braking feel is, you do have to depress the brake pedal a little bit more, but still very responsive. In sport mode, you're not going to notice much of a difference. Steering does tighten up very slightly, but since we don't have sports tuned suspension, you're not really going to notice much of a difference. Also, throttle response doesn't change too much at all. The vehicle does become a little bit more aggressive and comes to life to a certain degree, but this is a vehicle you're going to be driving around town and with your family, so obviously it's not going to be something you're going to be throwing around in corners and driving aggressively. It's not a crossover version of the GTI, though I would like to see that in the future. I do think, though, that if you are looking at buying a Taos very seriously, I would wait for the all-wheel drive models. Obviously, if you live in New England, you're going to want that all-wheel drive system. But I think the DSG is going to be a better pairing. That's just my take. Although, with vehicles that do have traditional automatics, the gear shifts are smooth, but there's just not much to work with. It doesn't really feel refined when you're accelerating. This isn't that bad. I'm actually, dare I say, impressed. That's what I think is really important for this brand, is to have a vehicle at around $25,000, $35,000 that feels like the rest of the lineup. No, obviously it's not going to feel like a Tiguan, definitely not going to feel like an Atlas, but when you're looking at a base model or an entry-level vehicle for the lineup, this is exactly what you expect from Volkswagen. Now, coming from somebody who owns a Volkswagen GTI and also as a family member that owns a Volkswagen Golf Alltrack, I really thought that a 1.8 liter or even a 2 liter would be more beneficial for this vehicle moving forward. However, the 1.5 is doing quite well on these back roads, and I can see why Volkswagen did this. It's better for efficiency, but also it's still pretty peppy. And that's one thing that really stands out to me, because you look on paper and you're like, okay, so it's somewhat underpowered, definitely not the most powerful in its segment. Was it going to offer me? But this is actually pretty good. I like what the Taos is offering here, what's giving me right now. Now we are going to do one quick acceleration onto the highway to see how it gets up to speed. Unfortunately, further up the highway there is an accident, so traffic is not going to be perfect for this video, so I'm going to get off on the next exit. But we're going to see what we can get here. And unfortunately, not much. When it comes to passing power, you have plenty of it. This actually responds pretty well for what it is. So one thing I've learned in the 10 minutes of test driving the Taos is that it picks up pretty nicely. So we just got around a slower truck on the highway with ease. And when you're just driving around in the city or the suburbs, especially on these back roads, it does quite well. So even though I would say that I wish that it had a bigger engine, I think this is more than adequate. Of course, I would like to see a 1.8 or 2 liter. Also something too I'd like to experience is the all-wheel drive model. I'd like to see what the DSG is like paired with this 1.5. But the 8-speed is doing quite well. Also, when I say I want more horsepower, take that with a grain of salt, because I was told that the Taos has only been here for about a week at the dealership, and they've already sold 3 of them with front-wheel drive. So clearly, this vehicle is providing enough value to consumers up here in the Boston area where they're buying them immediately. Now, for those who are concerned about the Volkswagen Taos when it comes to performance, and they're on the fence, like, should I go with a compact crossover? Is the Taos going to be enough for me? Well, when it comes to practicality, I say it's more than enough. It's better than most vehicles it's competing against in that regard, especially when it comes to legroom and shoulder room, and even when it comes to headroom. But when it comes to performance, and you're like, well, I could buy a compact crossover for on the same price, and it should be a bit more peppy. I'd actually disagree with that, because the Nissan Rogue, which I've recently reviewed, actually felt a lot slower than the Taos. So definitely keep that in mind. I actually think that this is a perfect vehicle, and that's something that I would not normally say, especially after doing my research on this crossover, and I'm like, oh man, like, is it a worthy successor to the Golf and also the Golf Alltrack? I think for most consumers it would be. I think that if you are coming from a Golf or Golf Alltrack and you're looking to upgrade to a newer Volkswagen, I think you're going to like the Taos for sure. You're going to like what it provides. Now, obviously, it's not going to have a lower center of gravity. It's not going to feel like a car. That's not what it's meant to be. But when it's compared to other subcompact crossovers, it definitely holds its own for sure. And because it doesn't have a CVT, it feels more refined. It feels more enjoyable to drive. And on these winding back roads, I'm having a blast. It feels good. It's a great daily driver, and that's what it's meant to be. And that's why I think that Volkswagen does have a winner on their hands. They've given this vehicle a package that could succeed immediately, and we're seeing that right now at Quirk Volkswagen, where they've already sold 3 of these vehicles already within a week, and those are just the front-wheel drive models. Imagine what's going to happen when the all-wheel drives come. Obviously, there are some bits and pieces where I think that people could say, I think Volkswagen do a better job. Obviously, from my end, being a Volkswagen GTI owner, I want to see a bigger engine. But also, I think some people would say, well, they want more interior refinement. But I think overall, when looking at what you're paying, when you're looking at $25,000, $30,000, this is not bad at all. Then with the SEL, you're going to have a full digital gauge cluster, and that to me makes this vehicle seem like an entry-level luxury vehicle. So I like what Volkswagen's done. Obviously, built on the MQB platform, it's a winner already. The MQB platform, to me, is one of the best in this market for sure. And then just when it comes to driving experience, you don't really get the body roll on these winding back roads. And that's really important to me because I like driving on the back roads. I like having a little more fun behind the wheel. And the Taos is performing quite well with that. So I love it. I love what the Taos is providing here. Also, in sport mode, what I can appreciate too is that Volkswagen isn't giving you a fake feeling when it comes to that performance, so the engine doesn't really become that aggressive. Gear shifts don't change up that much either. Steering does tighten up very slightly, but it's not like most brands where they come up with this fake feeling, this manufactured feel, which to me I just don't like, especially where this doesn't have a GTI badge or an R badge. So I know exactly what I'm walking into, where brands are trying to give these vehicles that feeling of performance and that sports car feel, and it just doesn't feel natural. Where this feels like a true crossover, but because of its size, it does feel somewhat car-like. It feels like a vehicle that you can definitely maneuver around for sure, especially if you live in the city or you live in urban areas. You're going to be able to move this vehicle around and park it very easily. So I'm actually more impressed having driven this vehicle now than looking at on paper and doing the research. Experiencing it in person is a completely different experience. So I would definitely recommend take this vehicle out for a test drive. Compare it to other subcompact crossovers and even some vehicles that are closer rivals like the Jeep Compass and also the Nissan Rogue Sport. From what I hear, a lot of Jeep Compass buyers are coming in and checking this vehicle out. And it's because it does have that Atlas-like design to it. It looks rugged. It looks fun, especially in cornflower blue. It has that youthful vibe to it. It has that adventurous feel. And I think a lot of people who would be looking at a Subaru Crosstrek or a Jeep Compass would definitely come and look at a Volkswagen Taos for sure. And I think when you look at that performance on the lower end, it's not that bad. It falls right in line with its closest rivals. So to me, don't buy into the numbers. Experience it yourself, because I do think you're going to be pretty impressed. So at the end of the day, what are my final thoughts for the Volkswagen Taos? Well, I think this vehicle has a lot going for it, especially when it comes to practicality and interior room, because even when you look at luxury subcompact crossovers, yeah, they're going to have the comfort, but they're not going to have the practicality. They're not going to have the legroom or the rear cargo space. And when you look at subcompact crossovers like the Subaru Crosstrek or Mazda CX-30, they're not the most conducive for a small family, whereas the Taos can definitely be that for someone who is on a strict budget. And that's why I think the Taos could be successful in that regard, because when you're looking at, say, the Volkswagen Golf and the Golf Alltrack, they just weren't the most family friendly. Yeah, they were practical, but they just weren't there. Whereas I think the Taos, especially at the price point for an S or an SC, when you're looking at spending under $30,000, this is exactly what you want to see. But on the higher end, I like the technology. You have a full digital gauge cluster. You also have a nice responding infotainment system. And of course, Volkswagen likes giving us cleanly laid out designs when it comes to interior layouts. So I like that. However, there is one thing I would critique, and that is performance. And even though most vehicles in this price range and segment are going to have CVTs, and they're not going to be the most powerful, I would like to see the 1.8 make a return from the Golf Alltrack. I think that paired up very well with the DSG. And of course, this is a front-wheel drive version, so we don't have the DSG. We have an 8-speed automatic instead. So maybe the DSG is going to perform a little better. But I would like to see Volkswagen give this vehicle more power, especially when you're looking at spending around $35,000 for an SEL. I just think that having somewhere close to 200 horsepower and maybe over 200 pound-feet of torque would be a lot better for sure. But that would be the only critique I would have, especially me being a owner of a Volkswagen GTI. I would like to see maybe a more performance-oriented version of the Taos moving forward. But I think when it comes to practicality and interior room, consumers are going to like this vehicle for sure. I also think that Volkswagen has set themselves up for success, especially now since we're seeing the subcompact crossover market grow a bit when it comes to exterior dimensions. And Volkswagen is giving us a very family-friendly vehicle that I think is perfect for all situations. And what Volkswagen has done here is that they've replaced two somewhat non-practical vehicles in 2021 and have given us a vehicle that I think a lot of consumers are going to love, especially if they have a family. So I think that if you are looking for a crossover in the mid $20,000, maybe mid $30,000 price range, take a look at the Volkswagen Taos. I think you're going to like what you have to work with here, especially if you do go with the SEL. But do keep in mind that performance is going to be a bit limited, and that's really where I want to see Volkswagen change a bit when it comes to the Taos. Maybe give us an R model or something along the lines of a GTI for the Taos. I just think that would be very beneficial for this particular model moving forward. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.